94%. That is the number. 94% of people in a controlled laboratory setting felt completely certain about an answer that was factually, verifiably, and sometimes spectacularly wrong. Sit with that for a moment. Not 94% of a particular demographic. Not 94% of people who were tired or distracted or rushing. 94% of people paying attention, applying effort, and experiencing from the inside the unmistakable sensation of knowing. That sensation is what we are here to examine. In 1999, David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger published a paper that the popular imagination immediately simplified into a comfortable story about incompetent people being too incompetent to know they are incompetent. That summary is technically accurate and almost entirely useless. The finding that matters, the one that tends to get quietly passed over, is the specific number attached to the lowest performing quartile. Participants who scored in the bottom quarter of a test estimated their own performance at the 62nd percentile. They were not guessing randomly. They were not performing false modesty in reverse. They experienced with apparent sincerity the cognitive sensation of having done reasonably well. The gap between their actual position and their perceived position was not a gap in information. It was a gap between an internal signal and external reality. And the signal from the inside felt exactly like knowing. This is the question that Dunning and Kruger's work opens but does not fully answer. What is that signal, and where does it come from? Neurologist Robert Burton spent years investigating precisely this. His conclusion, documented in his work on the neuroscience of belief, is both straightforward and deeply strange. The feeling of certainty, that specific, recognizable sense of being on solid ground, of having correctly identified something, is not generated by the prefrontal reasoning systems. It is not the output of your analytical processes completing their work and issuing a report. It is a neurological event, produced primarily in subcortical regions and coordinated through structures including the anterior cingulate cortex, and it fires as a response to pattern completion. When the brain finds a match, when incoming information fits an existing internal model, the certainty signal activates. The accuracy of that internal model is a separate question entirely, one the system is not primarily designed to ask. The brain's foundational operating priority is narrative coherence. It requires a stable, continuous story about what is happening, who you are, and what the world means. Certainty is the signal that the narrative is holding together. It is not, and was never designed to be, the signal that the narrative is correct. These two things, coherence and accuracy, feel identical from the inside. That is the problem. That is the entire problem. In calibration studies examining what researchers call the overconfidence effect, subjects who rated their confidence at 99% were wrong between 15 and 40% of the time, depending on the domain. Not occasionally wrong. Not wrong in edge cases. Wrong nearly 1 time in 5 at the moment they experienced maximum certainty. The feeling was not a side effect of knowledge. It was a neurological event running on a separate track. One that can reach full intensity whether the underlying belief is correct or catastrophically mistaken. Elizabeth Loftus demonstrated something adjacent and equally unsettling in her decades of memory research. When people receive subtle, misleading information after an event, a slightly altered detail, a leading question, an assumed premise, their memory updates to incorporate the new information. This is unremarkable. What is remarkable is what happens to their certainty. As the memory becomes less accurate, certainty about it increases. The assembled version, the one that has been smoothed and consolidated, feels more real than the original perception. The feeling of photographic clarity is most intense precisely when the photograph has been altered. This is not a flaw in a small subset of people. This is the architecture. Consider what researchers call the Moses illusion. Subjects are asked how many animals Moses took on the ark. The vast majority answered 2. Moses, of course, was not on the ark. Noah was. But the question is semantically coherent enough, and the brain's narrative completion system fast enough that the false presupposition passes through undetected. People answer with confidence. People feel no disruption. The certainty signal fires on a question built on an error, and nothing in the experience flags the error as an error. Now pull the laboratory walls away. Bring this into the actual texture of a life. There is a person who knows exactly what was said during the conversation that ended something important. They can hear the specific words, they can see the expression. The certainty is physical, located somewhere in the chest, and they would stake significant things on its accuracy. That certainty does not mean they are right. It means the story has fully assembled, the narrative is coherent, the signal fired. What was actually said exists somewhere in a biological record that has been curated, revised, and consolidated every time it was retrieved, and the curated version now feels more real than anything that could contradict it. There is a professional who has made the same category of decision for 2 decades and experiences their certainty as expertise. In some domains, this is partially justified. Repeated feedback loops can sharpen calibration over time. In medicine, in financial forecasting, in long-term strategic planning, the evidence is considerably less comfortable. Experience in these domains reliably increases confidence. It does not reliably increase accuracy. The two curves diverge. The professional feels the certainty of a master and operates at the calibration of someone who has simply repeated an error long enough to stop questioning it. There is a person defending a political position with the specific physical sensation of standing on solid ground. That sensation was generated before the argument began. The prefrontal systems that are now constructing a coherent defense are not the systems that produced the certainty. The certainty came first. The reasoning followed. The reasoning feels like the cause. It is the product. There is a memory of a childhood event that feels permanent, complete, and wrong in ways that will never be discovered, because the people who could verify it are gone or have their own consolidated versions, or simply never knew. What this costs, accumulated over a lifetime, is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is the compound interest of decisions that each felt correct and were never revisited, producing a trajectory that was never interrogated because it never felt uncertain. It is relationships where one person's certainty functioned as an erasure, not because they were cruel, but because the feeling of certainty is experienced as evidence, and evidence is hard to argue with. It is financial exposure taken at the precise moment the certainty signal was at peak intensity in markets that are indifferent to internal states. It is the self-perception that cannot update, because updating would require overriding a signal that has always been the reliable indicator of truth, and the system has no mechanism to tell the difference between the signal firing correctly and the signal firing in error. The instrument that measures the mistake is the instrument that made it. There is no independent auditor. The metacognitive systems that would evaluate whether your certainty is warranted are the same systems generating the certainty. They are not positioned to review their own output with any structural objectivity. This is not a design flaw that evolution overlooked. It is the design. Notice now something specific. At various points during the last several minutes, you felt certain that you understood what was being said. You felt the signal. It arrived with its familiar weight and said, "Yes, this. I have this." That feeling of understanding and the fact of understanding are two distinct neurological events. They feel identical. They have always felt identical. And the machinery that would tell you which one just fired is the same machinery that is already, quietly, moving on.